All right, Melissa Roehrich, how are you doing today?
How are you?
I am doing so well. We are just crazy getting ready for the Everflame ball.
So excited. I got some dresses. I don't know which one I'm wearing yet, but I have options at home, so it's fine.
Okay, are you going for more like generally like a fantasy attire? Are you going for like a realm or one of your books?
I just got pretty dresses. So
I love
yeah, normally I'm usually in black, so I did some other colors. So we're gonna see if I can step, into a little out of the comfort zone and wear a different color. We'll see. No guarantees, no promises.
I hear you. Black is such a safe place for me as well. It's just automatically elegant.
Exactly. It's elegant. It's just all the things. But there's one that's red, which is my husband's favorite. He's not coming to this one, but I'm just like, okay, we'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling.
There you go.
Right?
I bet red would be so beautiful on you. I can't wait to see what you decide. Okay. Well, I would love to dive into both of your series. So I want to start with Lady of Darkness, which that was your debut series, right?
That was my debut series. Yeah, that was the first one we wrote and put out into the world and didn't expect anything to come from it. And here we are.
So and here we are. I love that so much. Oh, so how long did it take you to write book one? Like this, when the dream all started?
So funny story, book 1 and 2 were actually written at the same time.
Okay.
They were one book. And so, but when we started, obviously for book 1, especially, it was very different. Like the first draft is very different from what ended up happening. Like some of the staple characters that people love now were not in the first draft. So then as it was rewritten and reworked, we got books, and then I was like, this is way too long to be one book. So we split it into 2. But so that one probably though was a good, when did I start writing that? Probably a good 2-ish years before like we went out and did the whole thing, before my husband was like, please just publish it or move on in life. Like, because it was just re-editing, like it was just constantly and eventually, you can edit so long, but eventually you're just changing story things versus actually editing. So he's like, just please just do the thing, or let's like do something else in life. And I was like, fine. Because then I'm defensive, like, fine, I'm gonna show you that I can do this. And so we did. Yeah.
Love that. That is exactly what my husband would say to me. He'd be like, just make a decision already, okay?
Exactly what happened. And it was like one of those, there's been a couple of times where he's like, do you really think this is a good idea? Do you think you should really be doing this? Yeah. Did you just challenge me? Because yes. So that's what happened here. And now here we are.
I love it. Hey, you know what? Sometimes we need that push of like, oh, I'll show you that I can do this. Exactly. Like in our own minds, we're like, but can we do it? I don't know. Right? But then when someone else says that, oh, let me show you what I can do.
Questioning me? Of course I'm going to do this now just to prove you wrong, right?
Yes, exactly. I love that. Okay, so then what inspired the book, and would it include like favorite fantasy books or TV shows, movies growing up or as an adult, like all of that?
Well, the book itself was written, so mental health is very big in all of my books. Like that's a staple thing that we focus on. And so for me at the time, I was going through kind of processing some of my own grief and trauma. We have our 3 boys, and we had lost 2 girls in second trimester losses. And so at that point we decided, okay, we need to be done trying, just because I couldn't emotionally do it again. And so that was kind of the death of a dream for us. Like we had always wanted 4 kids. Of course, we had boys, girls, and we love our boys, by the way. But it's just one of those like kind of a death of a dream and like moving on and mourning that. But there was just grief and trauma there. And so I had fallen back into reading, because that's what we do, right? We escape into books. And it just wasn't for me at that point. And so I had started writing, which I'd always loved to write. That was one of those like pipe dreams in high school, right? Like, oh, I'll write a book someday, but not something that you ever thought would happen. And so it was just one of those things. I started writing because I just needed something more than reading to get my feelings out. And so that's kind of how the books came about. But fantasy's always been my thing. Like Charmed and Roswell, like those TV shows growing up were like my bread and butter. I've always loved Greek mythology, been fascinated, anything with magic, gods, anything like that. So it's just kind of bringing all of that love together and seeing what came. And here we are. This
it must be why I love your book so much, because like I identify with so much of that. Like I haven't started a book, but I write slam poetry, and I've competed. That was part of how I was processing some grief a couple of years ago, and then always been obsessed with the Greek myths and the Roman myths and Egyptian ones and
all of that. Yes. Oh, I still anything like Percy Jackson or anything in those, oh, I gobble that up even now. Like that's definitely the things I love.
I love that. Did my son wear a Percy Jackson shirt to his first day of kindergarten today? Yes, he did.
Love that. I love that. When they announced the TV show for Disney Plus, did I go to my son and, like, he hadn't read the books yet, but I just handed him the stack and I was like, I'm gonna need you to be as obsessed as I am. Like, here you go, child.
I love it. We're raising up our kids to be as obsessed with our fantasy as we are.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Very cool. Yes, and also the same with TV shows and Buffy the Vampire and just all of it.
Yes. All. Yep. You're speaking my language. Yep.
I love it. Okay, so then you mentioned your theme of mental health, and that's obviously so obvious. It feels like most of the major characters coming into Lady of Darkness all kind of have this background trauma, like deep grief, like these deep losses, and they process that grief and those losses at different times throughout the series. But you have so many beautiful quotes and stuff like that. So like one of my favorites is like All the Way Through the Darkness.
Yes. Yep. That tattooed, and that's wild. Like to see my words like tattooed on people. But I wanted to really, especially with that series, and because the theme, of course, is grief and trauma. And the whole thing is you see that, like you said, with multiple characters. But what I really wanted to focus on was how they each processed it a different way. Because not everybody process, the people are like, I don't understand why this character is this way, because they're processing their trauma differently than you process it. And that was like the whole point, is they all had the same thing, but everybody's different. And for me, like when I look back on it, obviously there's a little bit of my story, I feel like, in every one of the characters. And like some of that, this was the way I could have seen things turning out if I hadn't realized the path I was going on. Like some of those different things, and what would that have led to? How would that have looked differently? How could we come back from the consequences of those choices that you make, whether out of grief or not? Like I'm very big. There's got to be consequences for like those hard choices. Magic doesn't fix everything, that type of thing. So those were the big things that I really wanted to explore in that series for sure.
I love that. And I think that's part of why it made the series feel so realistic emotionally. Like, yes, like the magic and the mythical creatures, and like, yeah, sure, that's not real, but like the emotional processing of hurt and fear and anger and all of that is distinctly human, and it shows up so well.
Are flawed characters. Like they're flawed. People, they're so irritating. They are, because they're flawed. Like that's just the way it is. I don't know what to tell you. Like, yes, because when you're in the middle of that, you make stupid choices sometimes because you just don't know what to do with yourself, and that's real life. That's how I feel. That's real life. If you're reading for an escape from real life, it's probably not where you want to go. But this is real life and flawed, and we're seeing how they handle it. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Exactly. And I see that even more with the Legacy series, which we'll get to later. But honestly, that's why it's my favorite series. Because I'm like, you drive me nuts, and I want to throw this book at every other page. Yeah. So I got so mad so many times, but it felt so much more human, because it's sometimes it can be fun to fall in love with a character that's just like epic and perfect, and sometimes that feels good and you need that, and other times you need to see yourself in a character, or you need to see someone that you're really struggling with in your life in that character. And I just feel like it helps us find our compassion.
It does. And I will say one of the most rewarding things for me is when I'm at events and people come up and they're like, I've never felt seen until you wrote Scarlet, until you wrote Talwyn, until you wrote Tessa, until you wrote that. Like, I never felt seen until I read those characters, or that specific character, and how they identify with that. And that's why we write. That's why I write. Like I always said, like, if one person reads it and it helps one person, then it got the job done. And that's what I wanted to do. And obviously it's grown and expanded, but that was always, if one person could understand they weren't alone in their dark spaces, like that's what we were going for. So yeah, definitely.
Exactly. And, I think it also feels, we always see the phrases, and there are even stickers and stuff like that now of like, reading is therapy, right? But replacement for therapy.
But seeing yourself in those characters, there is something so validating in that. And I found that even before I started writing, when I was trying to escape my reality and reading deeply and finding those characters that you were like, oh, okay, wait, I do kind of relate to that. Oh, look at this, just those key, like you said, those key phrases that you just pick up. I think it was just one line in an entire book, but that's that one thing that helped you get through that day. Yeah, we're good. Like then it did what it needed to. So
exactly. And the other part of that whole theme of the all the way through the darkness was like finding the stars.
yes.
And that just feels so relevant. There's all these articles out there these days about how our generations and younger are struggling with resilience, and that we have a hard time balancing perspective and emotional resilience and being able to pick ourselves back up. And as somebody who has struggled with mental health issues since college, I've seen those and been like, yeah, that's I relate to that a little too much. But that's been such a theme for me. Brene Brown, are you familiar with her?
Yes.
Love
Yep.
her. Yeah, we're just Brene Brown has that thing about the twinkle lights in the dark. That it's like life cannot be one giant stadium lighting, everything's light and easy all the time. That's just not life for the vast majority.
And and part of that too was the whole theme of darkness and finding it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like for me, especially when you're processing grief and trauma, sometimes I think I'm a very positive person. I'm always on it, but sometimes we take it too far, right? Like, oh, it happens for a reason, all this. That's not stuff that I needed to hear at that point in time. And when you're traveling through grief, especially trauma, you come out on the other side a very different person. And I was struggling to this is who I was back here, and now this is who I am. And they're not the same person. And finding that was okay. It's okay to change, you're not going to be the same person on the other side of grief, and that's okay if it's a little darker, if there's a little grayer area, and the things that you grow in the dark just as much as you grow in the light. And it's just different lessons that you learn there and how they shape you. And that was a huge thing for me writing that series and processing all of that it's okay to be different on the other side of going through all of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And I again completely relate to that. When I went through my biggest period of grief in 2023, I came out super different, to the point that certain friends did not stick with me. They're like, you're not the same person, I'm out. And I'm like, I like this me better.
Very much so. Exactly. My husband and I always talk about how I came out on the other side. I did not care when I got to the other side what people thought of me, of my choices, of where we made some pretty drastic changes. We moved in the middle of that. We moved from Bismarck, North Dakota is not a very big town, but where we moved to, middle of nowhere, hobby farm, compared to that, we moved. We started homeschooling our kids with that move. There were big drastic changes, and we just agreed. What do you think? I was like, I don't care. I don't care what this life's too short to care. That's kind of one of those things that came out of that was it's just I don't have it in me to care about any of that anymore. We're just going to do what we are feeling called to and where we are looking forward to and what's best for us and our family. And if that looks different than the world, I guess that's different than the world. We'll take it. Yep.
Exactly. And I think, and we see that in Scarlett and a lot of the other characters about allowing the trauma to change you, but not because it's especially if it was a really negative thing from somebody else. It's not that it was something that was taken from you, it's that we took back from it. Exactly. From that experience. Yeah. We're not letting it steal all of us. We're stealing from it of I'm going to take from this compassion. I'm going to take from this courage of I don't care what you think.
Yes.
Do you know the hell that I went through? I don't have time for your expectations.
Exactly that. It's one of those, Rachel Hollis says it all that said it. I don't have time for other people's opinions or whatever it is. That's just other people's opinions of me. Don't concern me. They don't get to have that focus or take that from my life. They can have that opinion and they can keep it and they can do what they want with it. We're just going to move forward. And that's where we're at. And we try to instill that with the boys. You can be compassionate and caring and still care about the world and not let that impact you is a huge thing that we tell our kids. As long as you're not hurting other people with what you're doing. Yep. go forth. Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
You can have compassion and care about people and have healthy boundaries.
Yep. That's what we say. Is it hurting other people? Is it hurting you? No. Okay. Let's go forth and do the thing then. Yep. So
love it. Yes. And then, so like then moving to Cyrus. Cyrus obviously handled his trauma very differently. He really turned to substances as a way to like numb and escape. And, it's super relatable. Maybe, more of us, numb through reading, but it still is like, I can't handle.
Yeah. Yep.
Being
wasn't going to have POVs. I always tell people this, like that's Cyrus. If you've read him and you know Cyrus, he can be demanding. And so he was like, no, I have a story to share and you need to write it down. So obviously he's one of the most beloved characters in that whole series. And so him exploring his whole story was, I can't even, they're one of my favorites too. So it's just, yeah.
I mean, I think the more, just like the emotional processing and grief and all of that sort of thing that a character experiences, the more you feel connected to them.
Yep. Yeah. And I mentioned at the beginning that there were characters. He was one of them that wasn't in the original drafts. Like Cyrus wasn't part of it. Eliza and Rain, like the whole Rainer, Nuri, none of them were in like the very original drafts of the Lady of Darkness. And now I was like, I can't even imagine.
Oh,
those guys in there. Yeah.
They added so much richness to the series.
Sure. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. But one of the I think one of the most intense like lines or ways of thinking for Cyrus's story was like, you deserve to be happy. And I think a lot of us, especially if we feel like we've made some really significant mistakes, it's like maybe we're not able to admit it out loud, but something in the back of our brain is like, well, this happened because you don't deserve to be happy.
Right. Yep.
So
and I find it too with, and I think Cyrus, some of that I was exploring with Cyrus, now that I'm thinking back on it, I'm like, oh, look at that. Is when on the other side of that too, is when, we have found success and we feel like I don't deserve this kind of success because, in the back of your mind, you're like, but I did this and this and this. And so it's a whole thing of like, I am worthy of these good things that are coming, whether it's a relationship, it's love, it's success in your career, anything like that. And just claiming that kind of, even if you feel like your past is there type thing. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. I loved it. It was so powerful because I think the people who would relate with Cyrus may also have a similar theme of like self-sabotaging, because it's like, if I can control how this ends, it does not feel as threatening as if it was ended for me.
Yes. If I end it first, then I don't have to worry about it being taken from me because I deserve it. Very much so. Yes. Yep.
Which is such a self-protection thing. And again, so understandable, particularly with stories like his, but also, are you protecting yourself from being happy at that point?
Right.
From making life worthwhile,
Yep. Yes, exactly. All of that you. Yep.
Well, that's why one of the many reasons that I love that entire so good. I loved it. Well done. Okay. Yes. Okay. So moving on to legacy.
Yes.
So much to talk about. It's such. I will just say this. I have read so many romantasy books lately. Like, it's very difficult.
Yes.
to read anything else. It's just I'm in my era. Okay?
Yes, is that how it is? Yes.
It is. Yes. And I will say that people will talk about how there's a lot of commonalities between series and stuff like that, and common elements. But when I got into Legacy, it felt so fresh, because it was like the mistakes that people were making and the flaws and all this sort of stuff. It's like, I can't believe you just did that, like it felt new, and it felt that much more captivating. Like, I just could not put these books down because it was like, it wasn't this predictable, like, well, they're going to do the right thing in the end because that's what people do in these happy books.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We talk about like, they're just very different vibes. And I warn people, especially if they're coming from the darkness books first. But even in the note at the beginning of, Rainer said, this is not Scarlet and Soren. Tessa is not Scarlet. Theon is not Soren. Very different vibes. Prepare your heart before you go into this. It's okay. Like, just be prepared for that. Yeah, it's a much, as you know, darker series. Yeah,
it is. Yep. It absolutely is. And I think you have to be wired to sometimes for the darker approach. But for me, it just felt so relatable. So like to start with Tessa, obviously we find out eventually that she's gone through all of this trauma.
Yep.
And also she deals with it somewhat similar to Cyrus. She likes to run to substances.
Yep.
And as well as sex. Whatever is like anything that makes her
just that she can just she doesn't have to think, she doesn't have to feel anything that she can, which I think for Tessa it was leaning into the depression and anxiety of like really exploring how deep that can go and how processing that, again, just like with grief and trauma, is different for everyone. Like it can look so different depending on how deep it is, how long you've tried to ignore it, how Tessa she's another one that people are like, oh, she's so infuriating. Yeah, she probably is. She's never had, she doesn't know how to process emotion. She's never let herself process emotion. It was easier not to process emotion, not to feel, not to do any of the things. She wasn't allowed to explore any of that. And so, you're right.
I mean, you think about like emotional well-being, emotional IQ, emotional regulation. It like the way that we are wired as humans is to learn that from our parents typically, or at least from our caregiver, whoever that is. And clearly she was getting kind of the opposite.
Right. No. Yeah. She just, I had postpartum depression after our second. And then after the trauma of everything, there was depression and there was anxiety, especially I had never really experienced anxiety before until the second pregnancy. After our first, we'd had miscarriages, but nothing like that second trimestral loss where like you felt the movement. And then so after that first one, my anxiety, finding out we were pregnant again, I had never experienced anything like that. And so just being like drawing on some of that. And my husband was like, he gets a little worried, especially at the beginning of a series, because that's one of the first things that I figure out when I'm writing. What's the character's trauma, their backstory? What are they working through? What are their, what is the mental health stuff that we're going to be working through? And those, especially book one in a series, you're deep in that. And like, for me, I kind of go to their headspace. And so you're sitting in that and bringing up some of that old feelings. That was a hard one to write for sure. And obviously that's what you're hoping as an author, is to make your readers feel some of that, which people had very big feelings with the Legacy series, which is good. That was I did my job well then. I wanted you to feel. Yeah,
exactly right. It makes me think of the Maya Angelou quote that people may forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. It's like, it's just that it's something that stays with you. Would you say that it is fair to say that because of all of her trauma and everything, that particularly in book one, Tessa kind of has this victim mentality of like this kind of this helplessness to a degree?
Just because I think so, because she's never been she's kind of been groomed for that, right? She was groomed to like, you are submissive, you do what you're told, you're not supposed to have an opinion, you're not supposed to rise up, like this is your station in life and this is what you're supposed to be doing. And anytime she tried to take some back control, it was shut down. And so we're in survival mode, right? Like that's the whole thing of Devram. They're all villains there. And so anything to survive. And if that meant you're a victim, then I would say that's a pretty fair, and that's kind of one of the whole themes is like learning to take back power maybe you didn't even know you had, type thing. Yep. Yes,
exactly. And I think that's part of why she can be such a deeply relatable character or a deeply triggering character, is because of that victim mentality. Because like I know lots, I that's something that I struggled with. I actually went through 12-step recovery like over a decade ago, and that was part of it. Is like, I don't know how to get past this. Therapy's not helping me. And so it was, it's all about this like tension between surrendering control and understanding what is under your control. And it's so powerful. But and so I think that's, and then there are people who can't relate to that at all. And when they experience somebody who's deeply, in that victim mentality, it's so triggering to them and they just have no patience for it. But I love that because it's like, it's like the whole massive debate around the Nesta character in ACOTAR, right? Where it's like this divisive characters because it's like they are either, again, they're deeply relatable or they're deeply triggering. And but I think even when it's triggering, it's so healthy for people to read it because then it's like there is a reason that people are the way they are.
Exactly. And for Tessa, especially as you're going through the series, obviously book 4 isn't out, but like you go through and it's not a linear, we don't have linear growth here. Like we're going to go, you've read it, I mean, we go too far one way and then we go too far the other way because I feel like that's more relatable too. You're trying to figure it out. And so all I can think of is like when you're doing a new diet or you're trying to make big life changes, you try to do everything all at once, right? And then what happens? You're trying to do all these big changes, you're trying to make, and then something doesn't work or you can't keep up. And so then you're like, well, I've already failed. Now I'm just going to go back to how it was because there's too much, like I'm going to work out. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to eat the healthier food. I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend more time with my kids. So you're trying to make all these changes instead of doing like the little things. What happens is you get overwhelmed. And so for me with my ADHD, like when I get overwhelmed, I just shut down. I'm like, okay, well now I'm not doing anything. Right. So like, but again, real life, they're flawed characters. We don't have linear growth. It's going to be up and down, just like when we,
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, you keep expecting because of these patterns in other books that Tessa's going to like find her power really early and she's going to be this beautiful light of a person. And it's like, not yet. No. I feel like in book 2, she's kind of starting to find her power and some agency. And then of course, book 3, it's like, oh, we found some power, but
exactly. And that in book 3, that's where I said like, we go too far another way, maybe, perhaps. And like, again, when we overcompensate or now we're trying to, we found this power. And that's the same thing though. Like you have a victim mentality and then you go that way and you're like, well, now I'm going to make everyone who made me suffer. Like think it's a whole, again, we're back to a mental health thing of the different ways people react to situations and it's not linear. And sometimes you sit back and you go, what are we doing? But real life. Yep.
Exactly. And again, I think it comes back to this idea is like, maybe people, I didn't feel this way, but maybe people would get impatient with her of like, come on, like get to the end of your story arc, like be a good person. And it's like, and I love that you took your time with that because it's like, again, that's not realistic for it's like, well, you know what? I thought about it for a minute and now I'm over my trauma and I'm a good person,
Right. And that's kind of something with both of them is like they grow, but in darkness too, it pops back up because grief isn't like, we don't just heal from grief. Grief shows back up. And I think that's the same thing with Tessa. Like we can grow and grow, but we're still going to have some fallbacks. And it is really interesting to see, the people who relate with Tessa or the people who my husband finally, he just read them. He hadn't read any of my books. And then he did the audiobooks because he's not a reader. He doesn't he can't retain if he's read it, but I'm sorry. So he did the audiobooks. And once he started, he did them all. And like, it was a crazy, I was like, you read those very quickly, but he's a huge theater. He's like, now running, he's a guy. So, but like, he's like, at the end of the third one, he's like, he's mad at Tessa. And I'm like, whereas other people are like, yeah, Tessa, like it's a whole, so it's always interesting for me to see where people fall. And because again, different life experiences have shaped our world views. And so everybody interprets them differently. So it's always interesting to see Scarlett, Tessa, obviously very different characters and people have preferences. And so the same with Legacy to see like where we're falling on different things. So yeah.
Exactly. And I love that. And now Theon obviously went through his own trauma. Obviously handled it very differently.
Right.
It seems like he never struggled with like, do I have power in this situation?
Right.
Like he felt like it seems like he decided early on in his life, like my father's constantly trying to take power from me and I am going to figure out how to protect it secretly.
And with Theon, he was raised like, this is where I think, especially like looking at our world today, you're raised with certain views, right? Like a lot of that. And he was raised to, you're the most powerful and you keep that. Like, this is, of course you should be above everyone else. That's your that's your station in life. Whereas Tessa, was raised to believe we're there to serve the legacy. I am the legacy, and I'm not only am I the legacy, I'm the top. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. Of course, everybody's going to do what I say. Of course, I shouldn't be questioned. Like, because you can look at the world today, like you can see those same patterns and how, especially generational patterns and like breaking those cycles. And that's one of those things that we see. I hope we see with Theon and Axel as we go, of like breaking those generational things of what you were taught for entirely growing up and how you were raised and what you're supposed to believe, and realizing, wait a minute, maybe that's not exactly how things are supposed to be going. Yes.
Exactly. And I think there's even like the conclusions that Theon had come to in the ways that he raised were logical.
Yeah.
It was logical to think everybody should just do what I say because I am the top few most powerful people in the world. I'm in
a position to make the change. Of course I can do, like, why wouldn't they follow me when I tell them what we're going to be doing? But, and there was some of that element too of like, well, I don't read reviews. I don't usually even go in the comment section because that's a scary place for authors. But like you see some things you can't help but see it. But like, oh, if they would have just talked about it. And I was like, well, the miscommunication trope is a whole thing for me anyway, because I think that's the most realistic trope in life. But also on that, he couldn't tell Tessa because he couldn't trust her. She wasn't giving him any trust. So like, where were we supposed to, there was no middle ground at that point. Like that's where people, if they would have just spoken to each other, there was no middle ground. She didn't trust him. He didn't trust her. Why is he going to tell her all of his plans when she could just do whatever? She was a loose cannon, as we saw. Like, she was reckless and uncontrollable and unpredictable. And why would he be like, yeah, here's all my plans for you? Like, I don't know. It's kind of a whole, yeah.
Right. And that's, because like it's easy to get frustrated with Theon, but like if you take the humanity out of it, if you take the emotion out of it, everything he did was logical.
Yeah.
And you could even argue it was for the greater good. All this exactly. There's so much logic behind what he does, but his growth as a character is not that I don't have power available to me. It's I don't have empathy available to me.
Yep.
And so Tessa's journey, it feels like, about finding her power, but then also understanding that just because you have power doesn't mean you should use it to hurt people.
Right. Exactly.
Even the people that deserve it.
Yeah. And it's not even, there's that, but then also just because you have the power and you have these plans doesn't mean it's like obviously his thing is control. I'm like, there's things you can't control and you can't do it all yourself. Like,
right.
Still have to. Yeah. It's just all of them. It was a really hard thing for me writing them because, of course, as a author, I knew the growth. I knew where we were going. I knew everybody's story arc. Yes. People have big feelings. There are big feelings with these books. And so for a long time, like, I was even like not even in my reader spaces because we just didn't want, like, that's hard for me to write through. And like my own mental health required me to step back. And so because I knew where we were going, but yeah, at the end of book 1 or book 2, people aren't there where we're going, and we'll just trust the process. Like, it was a reoccurring theme. Trust the process. Like, I promise we're gonna get somewhere. Yep.
So, yeah, I love that. Speaking of places that you're taking the characters, and you may not, I'm sure you probably can't speak to this too much, but what it feels like, and this, of course, I will set this up as like spoilers ahead, but for people, because we kind of avoided them so far, but for this one, obviously Luca starts to have a much bigger role in book 3, and then obviously they connect in a very different way in the second half of book 3, and so and just the way you set up the, like, her daydreams and stuff like that, of like what would it be like to have not even just one but 2 people that were completely devoted to me and caring about me. So I don't know how much you could speak to this about whether or not you're heading in the direction of a why choose.
Oh, so yes, we can talk about that. It is in the content information, which is what I always tell people. Like, so this one was really hard. They are polyamorous. It is a polyamorous relationship, and that is in the content information for people going in. Like, but some people, this is a really hot thing right now, right out there, right? Like, don't list the tropes. It gives things away. Don't do this. So I always say, and people are like, oh, I don't like why choose, or I don't like polyamory, which is fine. But for me, especially this one, there's plot reason behind it. It's not just like, it's not done for spice. Like I'm always like, my spice is always very secondary. If there's spice, there's a reason that we have spice. Like I like spice. There's the next person, but my spice, there's always a purpose for it.
I love that.
And so it's not overwhelming. It's not the point of the book. And so, especially with the way this one goes, there's plot reasons that make sense for why it is the way it is as we go through. But yeah, so people will yell at me and they're like, I didn't know. And I'm like, well, then I told you to read the content information. Like I gave it to you, you didn't read it. So I don't know what to tell you, but don't yell at me.
And how else are you supposed to tell them other than content warnings?
I was like, I don't know how. I gave it to you on a silver platter. That's what I tell people. I laid it all out there.
But to be fair,
I apologize that you didn't go there. Right.
And to be fair, I don't always read the content warnings because sometimes they give away plot points. But I do it for books that I don't know anything about.
Right.
Because then it's like, because I do have a few things that I do not enjoy in writing. And so it's like, you're like non-consent kind of thing. Is this something, it's just for me, for other people like it. And that's totally fine. Not my thing.
Down. I really like how Katie Robert does it. She breaks her content information down by tropes, tags, and triggers. So like, I don't care what the tropes or the tags are. I just want to know the triggering content.
Yes.
You can go. So like, if you don't want to read the other 2 sections, you can just go and read the tropes, or you can go and read, whichever you need. And so I really like that. So that's how we started doing it, so that, this part doesn't matter to me, but I do have certain triggers. So then we can go there and check, or I do want to know what the tropes are or what the tags are for the book, so that they can make informed choices. But then don't yell at me if you choose not to do that.
Again, it's like, well, were you expecting an email when you bought the book? Like, here's all
would you want me to personally call you and let you know? I don't know. That's how I feel some days.
I know. It's so.
I'm gonna stay off of all of the comment section today. I'm feeling a little snarky.
Well, it's so funny. Just even as a fantasy book planner, and fantasy book event planner.
Right.
I handle our social media, and so I'll put information out there, and I don't always put it all in the reel. Sometimes I put it in the caption, and then I'll get all these questions, and I'm like, so you're readers. Why are you not reading?
I posted new art, and it's like, okay, the art obviously is the graphic, and then in the caption, it's like, oh, if you know, you know. If you don't, go read the Lady of Darkness series. And now I have comments like, which series is this? Which series is this? And I was like, I was talking to Jay Kristoff a couple of weeks ago when I was in Vancouver, and we were talking about this exact thing, about how, like, readers aren't always the best readers for social media, because they he started doing a thing where if they ask a question that's in the caption, he would tell them that they owe him a pony. So that's how he would respond. So they ask a question, he'd be like, you owe me a pony. So readers started bringing him ponies to like events. So in his office, he has like a whole shelf of ponies. And I was like, I'm going to take it and I'm going to tell people. Actually, it's in my stories today. You can even see it. I was like, if you ask me a question that's in the caption of the post, I'm going to tell you, you owe me a dragon. Like, yes, right there, you guys. Yes.
You're going to have the best dragon collection. I love that so much. Well, unfortunately, I have to wrap up this conversation. Children to be picked up at school, but I could talk to you for so much longer. I just feel like we speak the same language. I love your books.
Thank you. So excited to see you in a couple of weeks in Denver.
I'm so excited. It's going to be such an amazing weekend, and it's so much wrapped into it. And you just made it so much better by being willing to come, and I'm just so grateful.
It's grateful for the invite, and so I'm excited to see all of you and everyone. And it's going to be a beautiful evening for sure. So,
absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again for making the time, especially while you are on vacation. And I'll be sending out the newsletter with some snippets from this in the morning, and then posting some things about it so everyone will see. But thank you again, and I will see you here in 2 weeks.
Perfect. We'll talk soon. All right. Bye.
Okay. Stop recording.
The recording, right?